What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and today we're going to get into our Week 16 takeaways from the semifinal round. We have a lot of really good stuff to talk about. A lot of our guys popped off this week. We had A.J. Brown, T. Higgins. Also, if you guys hear anything in the background, my mother decided that right now is when the washing machine had to get going. So if there's anything in the background, I'm sorry. My bad. Happens to the best of us. We're going to get in here short, sweet, talk about my top 10 lessons learned, observations, just things that I saw from the semifinal week last week. Now, with that being said, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm critical. My nitty bag.
And you guys know, off the top, had something on my tongue. Off the top, we're talking about T. Higgins. And this was a darling of mine. I begged all of you guys to draft him. I drafted him everywhere. I will say most of the spots that I drafted T. Higgins sadly weren't in the playoff mix. I will say I saw my winnings from best ball skyrocket yesterday after the T. Higgins performances. All of those teams that I have with T. Higgins over season long in best ball doing really, really well right now. And what I wrote for my first takeaway is T. Higgins is an absolute god. The guy is now the wide receiver 11 in points per game on the season, which is wide receivers with over 10 games played. So wide receiver 11 in points per game with 16.1 points per game. I know a lot of you guys were coming on my head when I used to say Jamar Chase and T. Higgins could both be top 24 wide receivers. They could both be wide receiver ones. No one believed me. They are now wide receiver 10 and wide receiver 11 in points per game with 1 week more to go. T. Higgins just put on an absolute masterclass. The guy had 13 targets, 12 catches, 194 yards, and 2 touchdowns for 43.4 PPR points. Now, it came later on in the season. This was the upside that we thought we were going to get with T. Higgins, but man, that is insane upside. 43.4 PPR points. You know, all of the pumping from the offseason looked really tough through those first 8 weeks, but now brought her home. If you snuck T. Higgins into your playoffs, I swear to God, this is the year that I think 1 and 2 seeds are struggling this year, because the guys that got you there, the Jonathan Taylors of the world, I guess Austin Eckler's, guys that got you to that final game aren't coming up huge. It's the guys like A.J. Brown. It's the guys like T. Higgins. Trying to think of other names, or even Amon-Ra St. Brown, Gabriel Davis. If you have a weak team and you strapped something together as a 6 seed, you're probably looking pretty good right now, because the guys that didn't perform in the beginning of the year are kind of heating up now. And I will say that's kind of something to keep in mind when you're doing mid-season trades. Sometimes you could trade away T. Higgins, you could trade him away low. You probably want to just hold on and just get, into the upward swing of things. So obviously you don't want to sell low and buy high, but that's just something to keep in mind. Our second takeaway from the same offense is, 1, the Bengals are insane. But 2 is, I don't know why they don't always pass like this. And this is something that's a little bit annoying on the back end of things, right? Is Zach Taylor. Because we have a team with Joe Burrow, who's amazing, T. Higgins, who's amazing, Jamar Chase, who's amazing. The problem is that this team is getting held back a little bit by Zach Taylor. And this is, more of a dynasty tank, more of, projecting forward. And with this Bengals offense, Zach Taylor has kind of clipped its wings a little bit. And I'm not saying that this is, me, taking anything away from the Bengals, anything like that. Just kind of an observation on the coaching right now. Obviously, as you can see the chart, Joe Burrow went crazy through all over the place, had touchdowns in the 45-yard part of the areas of the field. Or no, he just had completed passes in the 45-yard plus part of the field. He had a great, day. The thing is that the last 5 weeks, they're 19th in pass rate over expectation. They're 22nd on pass attempts per game. Or no, they're 19th in neutral pass rate. They're 22nd on pass attempts per game on the season. And I get that Mixon is nice. The problem is with that defense that isn't amazing, and when you have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, that you can't be 22nd on pass attempts per game. I wish that they were top 5. If they were top 5 in pass attempts like they were last year, where they averaged 40 pass attempts plus per game, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase would be even higher than they are right now. I wish that they would kind of, it is kind of a let Joe Burrow cook kind of thing. This week, they passed 46 times against a Ravens team that they were blowing out the entire time. They were 4th this week in neutral pass rate. So passing the ball a lot more than they usually do against the Ravens. I don't know why that was. I don't know if it was because they were talking smack or just because their secondary was a lot easier to exploit than the run defense. But lost in the mix of all this is just that I wish, if Eric Bieniemy was their head coach in the offseason, if Brian Daboll went there in the offseason, this offense would be even more insane. So I will say that I think, kind of like Cliff Kingsbury, Zach Taylor hitched his wagon to a really good young up-and-coming team, and that's going to preserve his job, even though they'd be a lot better if they could get, a new piece on that team or a new head coach on that team. Then moving on, kind of just wanted to touch on my thoughts on James Robinson in Dynasty, and it really sucks, man. It sucks because as much as I've faded James Robinson and I pumped up Travis Etienne, you'd never want to see a guy who's an undrafted free agent, hurt his stock this bad, because now this is the problem. He tore his Achilles, and no one really comes back from that injury very good. I mean, we're seeing Cam Akers now, but he suffered that injury. He suffered that injury in the offseason. So now we're like playoff time. He can kind of come back in, but realistically, he's looking at like week 1 of 2022. James Robinson tearing his Achilles in the second to last week in a meaningless game for the Jaguars has now probably cost him the 2022 season. He's a free agent in 2023. So now he is going to take a year off from football most likely. And then when it becomes his payday, an undrafted free agent hitting the open market, pretty much the biggest offseason of his entire career, will come off of his worst season as a pro in the NFL, which sucks. And if we want to flip the perspective to fantasy or dynasty in particular, when it comes to James Robinson, it's pretty much I would compare him to like a Phillip Lindsay or like a Duke Johnson at this point. I know Duke Johnson wasn't undrafted, but guys that were efficient and then kind of just become dust. I don't see how he becomes a free agent in 2023, goes somewhere else, and I mean, now he's going to be year 4. He'll probably be in like a committee type backfield, maybe like kind of like how Melvin Gordon was with Javonte Williams this year. I have a tough time seeing how James Robinson ever becomes an RB1 ever again, or even an RB2. It's going to be an uphill battle because one, players don't come back. Like this is everything I'm saying is assuming that he makes a full recovery from an Achilles injury as well, which we haven't really seen too often. We have seen Deonta Foreman, but he suffered that injury his rookie year, and he's just now like 2-3 years later being productive. So it's really sad for James Robinson. Now the silver lining, we're talking about this just strictly from Dynasty. I'm not celebrating or anything like that. I have James Robinson in Dynasty teams. I had him in all of my big spots this week. I went like 1-4 in the semis. Really not a great week for your boy, and James Robinson was one of the reasons. I also had him on best ball teams that were in the big Best Ball Mania tournament on Underdog. Lost because James Robinson. So that sucked. I will say if you held on to ETN in Dynasty, you weathered the storm, his value just increased. Because next year, he won't have James Robinson. They probably don't add anybody, maybe a veteran. But this opens up, the opportunity for ETN right away next year. If he can start in week 1 of 2022, you'll have a new coach. And hopefully they don't draft, a running back in the first 2 rounds. And even if they did, the running back crop this year isn't anything special outside of, Spiller, Hall. Even then, they're not amazing prospects. So because of that, ETN's value jumps. I wouldn't buy him because now you're buying somebody for, more than you could have got them last week. I think you already missed the boat on ETN at this point, and I wouldn't be selling. I think you just hold. You just kind of hang your hat on the idea that yes, his value has gone up. Maybe you sell if someone wants to give you a crazy offer, like maybe like a top 13, top 12 type running back value. But for that, I'm holding there. And with James Robinson, I'll be honest with you guys, I'm selling him. This is all dynasty. I'm selling him for anything remotely close to a second. Anything close to a second, you can get an early second, late second. If you can get, even like Rondale Moore, I would maybe even take I don't know, man. Like I would be trying to get out of that because I think that he probably goes to dust over the next year. Moving on to our 4th takeaway is let's talk about Davis Mills. And he just beat the Chargers 41-29. He had 18.06 points. He had 21 completions, 27 attempts, 77.8% completion percentage, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And I kind of just wanted to put him into my sophomore database. That takes into account rookie players' points per game, where they were drafted, and their PFF passing grade. Those are all things that we know are predictive. And his comps don't look amazing. Now, I will say quarterback, these sophomore comps are much more predictive. Running back, wide receivers, but I just wanted to get kind of a feel of what we're looking at here. And I'm not opposed to the idea that Andy Dalton, Derek Carr are his ceiling comps. I think that that's decently fair. right? I mean, like that's not awful. He's looked good over these past, however many games. I'm gonna push back on the idea though that he's like better than Mac Jones, needs to be put in that same conversation. I think even as a guy, you guys know me, I don't even like Mac Jones, but I think that talk is kind of craziness for a couple reasons. One is that Davis Mills isn't a first-round pick. He also has 0 rushing upside, so I'm not extremely interested in him. And I know that Mac Jones doesn't either, but Mac Jones is a first-round pick, so he has a lot more stability, a lot more safety around his value. He also has looked a lot better this year, whereas I know that Davis Mills and Mac Jones from a fantasy standpoint have probably produced about similarly, but when you look at PFF passing grade, one of their most predictive stats, Mac Jones has a 78.9 passing grade, which is insanely good for a rookie. It's like top 15 on the season. Davis Mills has a 56.6 passing grade, which is, pretty much bottom 5 to 10. So even in the games that he's looked decent, he hasn't graded out insanely. Again, I would probably put him in, I know that it says Andy Dalton, Derek Carr is a ceiling, but I think Mike Glennon, Drew Lock, Nick Foles are a little bit more, in his wheelhouse is what I would say. And I think if anybody is going to give you, good value on that back, something like, I'm trying to think, I don't know if you could squeeze out a second, I would do that all day. I'm trying to think, maybe you package like Davis Mills in like a third or I don't know, even like Davis Mills in a second to go up and get like a random first. I would do that all day long. I don't know. I just don't think he doesn't have any rushing upside. So I'm just not super interested in guys like that. Like I'm really interested in guys like Jalen Hurts. Anybody that's not a first round pick that has legs, fine. You have an insane amount of upside. But with Davis Mills, I don't really see it a ton. And then I also want to talk about his tight end, right? So Brevin Jordan. And Brevin Jordan's someone out here that's low-key killing it, and I wanted to kind of just talk about it. He has 7.7 points per game on the season, which is really nice for a rookie tight end. He also looks really good in PFF receiving grade, where he's the 7th highest graded receiver at tight end in the NFL, which is pretty solid. Now, he only has 7 games played. According to Pro Football Reference, only 2 of those are starts, so I don't really know what the snap percentage is to declare one a start, but he has 19 catches, 169 yards, 3 touchdowns. Not amazing, but I think that he's a nice upside guy for next year, I guess. He was somebody that I thought would have been drafted higher. He was drafted in the 5th round. He was, expected to be drafted in like the day 2 range, so round 2 to round 3. I think I would say that if anyone in your league is buying Brevin Jordan, I think I'd be selling. Right? If I could get like a second for Brevin Jordan, if I could put like Brevin Jordan, like plus for a second, I probably would as well. The problem that I have with him is that he's not very athletic. He didn't test well at all. He has a 4.53 relative athletic score. Essentially with these, upside tight ends, especially the guys that are like day 3 picks, when we're talking about the Antonio Gates, I want to say Jimmy Graham was drafted really late as well. He was drafted decently late. All of those guys that break out are insane athletes. They have like above a 9 relative athletic score. They run like 4.6s. They're all Mike Gesicki, Antonio Gates, Gronkowski type athletes. Brevin Jordan's not that. He kind of face planted at the combine. So I say all this to say that his comps look decent here. I will say I was being very generous to him because he's a 5th round draft pick. You can see the upside with like Olsen and Ertz and Mark Andrews, but you probably want to exclude everybody not named Chris Herndon and Albert O. And neither of those guys are very good. I actually really like Albert O, but he is a next generation type athlete, and that's why I'm interested in him. So I would say Brevin Jordan, his peripherals look nice, but the lack of athleticism is kind of why I would look to sell more than hold in Dynasty. But moving on from there, I wanted to talk a little bit about the boy, A.J. Brown, someone I've been, telling all you guys to buy all season. I know that it hasn't been amazing just because of the injuries, but he came back today and proved why he is a absolute god. He had 31.5 points on Thursday on 16 targets, 11 catches, 145 yards, and a touchdown. Never once did he budge outside of my top 3 dynasty wide receivers. I've always talked up A.J. Brown. I love the guy. He is extremely, extremely talented. He puts up insane numbers in a low-volume passing offense. And you can see, just from these stats from Field Yates, shout out Field Yates, how good was A.J. Brown in his return. He comes back. His first game back from an injury, he accounted for 69.4% of the Titans' receiving yards, the most by any NFL player in a game this season. He also had 8 catches on 3rd down, the most by any player since at least 1978. He was moving the chains. He was really, really important to his team winning that game against the 49ers. I would make the argument, I think that you guys are going to kill me for this, but thankfully it's week 17. I don't even know how many of you guys are about to watch this. I think you can make the argument that A.J. Brown impacts the Titans' ability to win games more than Derrick Henry does. That's just my opinion. Because Derrick Henry's great, but running back's a lot more replaceable than A.J. Brown. You can put Deonta Foreman in there. He can rush for 100-plus yards, but you take away A.J. Brown, even like Julio Jones, you take away him, and you leave Ryan Tannehill with Nick Westbrook, whatever his name is, Joff Swaim. He can't get it done. It's impossible. Regardless, moving on to takeaway number 7, we have Cordarrelle Patterson has come back to earth, and it sucks. He had 8.3 points on 9 opportunities this week. He had 4.3 last week on 13 opportunities. And he's losing grip on the backfield. He now has 54% snaps this week, 7 attempts, 12 routes. Not good, fellas. Not good. Him and Mike Davis are now pretty much splitting the backfield 50-50. I don't expect Cordarrelle Patterson to really be... I think he'll probably just be like a fringy RB3 moving forward in this championship week. So just something to keep your eye on if you have Cordarrelle Patterson. Don't just fire him up as a set and forget it RB2 like we have been. Then we have Isaiah McKenzie as Cole Beasley's replacement, not Emmanuel Sanders. So... with Cole Beasley gone, I kind of assumed that Emmanuel Sanders would be the guy who gets the bump, especially with Gabriel Davis out as well. It was actually Isaiah McKenzie this week. He had 12 targets, 11 catches for 125 yards, and a touchdown for 29.4 points. It's pretty wild that he had a 25.5% target share this week. He was targeted in his last 2 games. He was targeted 10.5 times. In his last 2 games, he has averaged 10.5 targets, a 24.5% target share. With Beasley gone. I mean, the guy has been pretty dang good. He has that type of role where he can play in the spot. He's more dynamic than Beasley, where he can take he's like a very I was gonna say like Tavon. He's kind of like a Tavon Austin, where he can take handoffs and reverses and all that kind of stuff. So that's pretty interesting. That now we have that bit of information where if Cole Beasley's out, don't give that bump to Gabriel Davis, Emmanuel Sanders. Give it to Isaiah McKenzie because he will be the guy in the slot. They run a specific Cole Beasley type role there where they'll run, even if the Cole Beasley's like in their number 2 wide receiver, in 12 personnel when they have just 2 wide receivers on the field, they'll run with their wide receiver 3 for Gabriel Davis or Emmanuel Sanders. And then they have a specific setup when they have a slot wide receiver that is going to be Cole Beasley at all times. That's what Isaiah McKenzie is at this point. Now, our last 2 takeaways I want to get into here. First of all, we have Antonio Brown is back. And it sucks because he's kind of like a shitty human being. Or I guess you can have whatever take you want about Antonio Brown. But the man is a dog. I really don't think that he's even really lost a step from his prime. He's definitely lost a step. But he's still in my opinion, I think he's still probably like talent-wise, like top 10 NFL wide receiver. He saw 15 targets, 10 catches, 101 yards for 20.1 points. Mike Evans is out again this week. He gets the Jets next week, so he's going to be insane. And then he's also 4th in PFF receiving grade, which they don't just hand those out. The dogs get the high PFF receiving grades. He's wide receiver 5 in points per game with 19.3 points in his 6 games played. 5 of those games came alongside Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. It's pretty wild what he's doing at his age. All that time off, he came back in, didn't miss a beat, 15 targets, 10 catches. I mean, this week, he is going to maybe win people their fantasy matchups as long as Mike Evans is out. He is going to be, even if Mike Evans is in, I don't care. Against the Jets, he's going to shred them. It's pretty wild. Now, our last takeaway is that D'Ernest Johnson's actually pretty good. I just wanted to slip this in at the end here because I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know if Kareem Hunt leaves or what, but D'Ernest Johnson, like the NFL running back, is actually really solid. And I just wanted to kind of bring some light to it. It's week 17. I only got so much to talk about, fellas. But he had 4 carries for 58 yards on Saturday, I believe. And he had 2 targets for 1 catch. And he had 2 targets, 1 catch, 8 yards through the air. So nothing insane, right? Only like 60 total yards. But he had like 66 total yards on only 5 touches of the football. And I know that that's just like super small sample efficiency. But of the players in PFF's database with minimum 50 rush attempts, he's 1st in PFF grade with a 92.1 rush grade. He's 1st in yards per attempt. He's 6th in yards after contact per attempt. And he's 1st in elusive rating. I don't love his athletic measurements. I don't really love anything going on there. You can say that, the Browns O-line's really good. But alongside Chubb and Kareem Hunt, he's outproduced both of them. Now, obviously, Nick Chubb's a better running back than D'Ernest Johnson. But D'Ernest Johnson is somebody in that he's in that Gus Edwards, Raheem Mostert type conversation for just, they have their role, they're between the tackles, grinders, and they can kind of do their thing. I think that if you put D'Ernest Johnson on another team with a good offensive line, he could do all right. I'm trying to think of guys that have had those kinds of years. I think he could be James Robinson. I think that he could be a James Conner like he was this year, where he wasn't that good. He was on a high-powered team. So we'll kind of see what the Ernest Johnson's future has in store. I don't think that there's going to be anything crazy, but he is somebody that needs to be rostered in Dynasty and someone that just to keep your eye on. He's not just some random body. He's been really, really good this year. Now, that's going to do it for us today, fellas. I love you guys. I hope all you guys win your fantasy championships. It makes me feel like a proud this feels weird, but it makes me feel like a proud father when I see all you guys go out there, dominate your leagues, go crazy, and you credit me as one of the people that helped you do that. So good luck to all you guys this week. I'll see you guys tomorrow for I'll see you guys tomorrow for the waiver wire show. Then we'll do running back rankings. We'll do wide receiver rankings. Let me know if there's anything else you guys want to see. We're kind of going to slow things down here. Only like 4 uploads this week. I think I'll do like 2 live streams next week, and we're going to really slow it down. And then I'm planning to, from playoffs through the Super Bowl, take things slow. Maybe only a couple videos a week. Just kind of, take time off, protect my mentals, hang out a little bit, and then we're going to come back, draft season, hit that super hard. So as always, if you're new here, subscribe, leave a like, and as always, I will see you guys in the next one.
I got the juice, I got the juice. 10-0, Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper song, singer, suspended, subpoena from Mr. Meaner.